Uze ate tweyongereyo abalungi. Dr. Kiyingi, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, yes. Without a
Yes.
doubt.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Okay.
Dr. Kiyingi, without further delay, I'm going to turn the mic over to you and give us a few words. And after that, maybe we'll hear from the listeners. We'll take questions from our listeners. And, at the end of the hour, we'll call it a day. So, Dr. Kiyingi, over to you now.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon for those of you in North America and Canada, South America. Good evening in Africa and Europe, and good morning in Australia and Asia. There is always a lot to talk about where it concerns Uganda. For today, I'll take an issue which is very painful to many people, very shameful to others, and definitely very dangerous to a lot of Ugandans. And this is the current wave of typhoid and diarrhea diseases in Uganda. These are basically diseases of poor sanitation, poor water supply, and contamination of water and food products. As many of you know, there is now really an epidemic of typhoid in Uganda. Although the numbers have been put down, but it is estimated that probably at least 30,000 people have been affected, and not only now in Kampala, but spreading to other areas of the country. You also heard media reports that the WHO experts confirmed that the water system in Kampala is contaminated. Now, this is a very serious problem. To start off, there are many factors that influence such an epidemic in any part of the world, but in Uganda in particular. Poor drainage in the city and suburbs is a leading factor. As you know, many channels are blocked or partially blocked. This is with rubbish, with maram, with all sorts of items that should not be there. This falls squarely on the government and the City Council of Kampala, but now the City Council is under government directly, so if the City Council fails, it's the government that has failed. It's no longer the City Council in isolation. Many channels have not been looked after properly. A lot of money has been sunk in Nachivubo Channel over the last 15 years. However, on the ground, there is very little to show for it. If you go to the suburbs, the drainage is appalling. It's no wonder that once you get an episode of typhoid, it will spread like fire. The wetlands have been encroached upon, and many times and many places actually destroyed. Of course, we know that wetlands do help in cleaning. They act as a sieve for the water that runs back into Lake Victoria. Of course, the water purification plant Again, we've had over the last 15 to 20 years of rehabilitation, modernization, and you go back and forth. Now, one wonders how a national water system can get polluted and contaminated to this extent, unless if there's been neglect, unless if there's been incompetence in terms of looking after the water purification system. Under a proper government, one would have expected that by now the government would have cancelled the dues and the payments people make to buy water. It's ironic that people continue to be charged for water when actually they are buying disease. This is a very serious. I think there is a credible argument here that the government should not only suspend payments or selling of the water for now, but actually compensate those people that have become sick due to a polluted system. And of course, one factor which is a constant in Kampala are the bad roads and the potholes. If you go around the suburbs, you cannot miss this. Or if you are in Kampala during a heavy downpour, you know very well that many parts of the city become flood areas. This is a recipe for spread of disease. And lastly, poor sanitation in terms of toilet facilities. Again, for many of you, you know that Kampala definitely does not have enough latrines and toilets, and even those that are run by, the very few that are run by the Kampala State Council are not up to standard. Again, this enhances the spread of disease. Regrettably, even after all this, those people who get sick, the medical facilities are not good enough. The medical facilities are lacking. There isn't enough medicine in the medical facilities, either in the hospitals or health centers, and there are not enough beds. Again, one thing that is shameful is that people continue to share the beds, or in many cases, more appropriately, to share the floor in these medical facilities. You don't have to be a doctor to realize that if you're dealing with a communicable disease, you should have strict sanitation criteria and strict isolation procedures. Obviously, if 3 or 4 people are sharing a mat on the floor and there is no water in the tap, or the water in the tap is actually polluted, then you are encouraging cross-contamination. So in fact, you're encouraging spread of disease. Catastrophes can befall a country anywhere in the world, and we should be saddened by this episode. If we knew that the government was doing everything possible, if we knew that the government has used the money over the years for drainage systems like in Achiviro Channel properly, if we knew that the government used the money to upgrade the Gaba purification plant over the last 15 to 20 years properly. But here we're dealing with a situation of absolute incompetence. We're dealing with a system of corruption, and we're dealing with a system of callousness where it does not matter if it is the common man suffering. I think now government might be waking up a little bit, because I'm told that even the well-to-do and the people in the offices are getting affected. But this does not absolve the responsibility of government. And they must explain to the people where all this money has gone, what has been done, what disaster procedures, preventive procedures were put in place to deal with such a situation. And finally, the government must take responsibility for the people that have died, because this is due to the negligence and the incompetence and the corruption of the current dictatorial and inefficient government of Yoweri Museveni. I'll stop here because I know you are all itching to have questions, and I'll be ready to take questions either on this subject or any other subject. I would remind you to visit the website www.ugandafdo.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for those wonderful words. I believe that the listeners are eager to ask you questions. I'd like to remind each and everyone that our lines are open. You're free to call in and ask questions. Our phone number is 818-534-8273. Doctor, I have a question from Mr. This is a listener in London. Mr. Katia. I don't know what that's the name. The question is, we have many of our boys and girls in the military deployed in many countries across the globe. How prepared are you to address that issue if you become the president of Uganda?
This is, of course, a sensitive and difficult question. One would have to look at what the actual agreements, bilateral agreements that Uganda as a nation signed with these countries. As you know, with this type of arrangement, many countries are involved. And one has got to critically look at that before making any decision. Secondly, and most importantly, one has got to look at the welfare of Uganda and Ugandans. Does this help Uganda as a nation? Does this help the people? Because at the end of the day, it's no good to conquer the whole world, but it's not beneficial to the actual country. So Uganda first as a nation must benefit, or has a potential benefit from this. So that has got to be looked at critically. And of course, lastly, it's going to be, would this endanger the people? Does it make the lives better for the people in Uganda, for the relatives of the soldiers, and also for the people in those countries where Uganda is deployed? So this is not a straight question and has to be looked at critically before major decisions are made. Next question.
This is from London. Came from Mr. Nume Teumula. It's also about the army. It says, yes, the army we have in Uganda belongs to one man, and that is Museveni. Yeah. How are you going to tackle that issue?
I think I addressed this in my previous talks, but I'll say it again. This, in many ways, is a product of bad government and a product of sectarian government. Once a nationally responsible government is in place, then the army ideally should be balanced, and there should be regional balance in the army. However, we are not going to conscript people and say, look, because it's a national army, you must come in if you're coming from Busoga or from Bunyoro. If the Bunyoro don't want to join the army, you cannot force them. But there should be an allocation or at least an attempt by government to have a properly balanced army from all the regions. And then this would depend on the applicants. This has not been the case, as you know, and that's why it's a personal army. 2, the Uganda army should be a national army, not just on paper, but in reality. And therefore, that means that the president cannot claim my army all the time. There must be condition, there must be regulation, there must be protocol, which at the moment is totally lacking. So, yes, I agree with you. We should have a national army, and definitely a government under my leadership will make sure that we have a proper national army.
Thank you very
Next
much,
question.
This question is from Kampala. It's from Mr. SM. He says he's a student at Makerere University. He says, recently we've been tear gassed, beaten, arrested, and starved. Mr. Kiyingi, we need your help. Please address this issue on Radio Munansi. Would you?
Was this a student or
Yes,
a civilian?
This is a
I didn't
student.
get that.
This is a student from Makerere.
Okay, first and foremost, I'd like to convey my condolences and also my greetings to those people who have been either killed or injured seriously. I know, and I've got reports and I've got pictures of people who have been beaten very severely, and some of whom have actually died. This is now a hallmark of the operation of Mr. Kaihura and his boss, Dictator Museveni. Students are beaten, students are molested, and some actually die. And this is a very, very serious issue. And the time has come for the world to know Museveni for what he really is. Even female students have been molested. Now, there is no need all the time to take tear gas and soldiers armed with live bullets to a higher institution of learning. Many of those problems can be solved by discussion. And in fact, many of those problems would not be there if there was proper government and proper accountability. So, my dear friend, I do share your grievance, and rest assured that under my government, institutions of higher learning will regain their glory. Institutions of higher learning will be respected, and there will be no army units stationed on Makerere University premises, or any other university for that matter. And definitely, this business of using tear gas and poisonous liquids against the students, or against anyone else, I think is in many ways criminal, particularly if you use live bullets and people get shot and people die. This is totally unacceptable, and under my leadership, it will definitely be rectified. And we should hold Mr. Kaihura and Mr. Museveni responsible for all those that have been killed and for all those that have been injured. Next question.
This one is from Stella NMW from Kampala. She says, I'm a medical professional. I don't know whether she's a doctor or a nurse. Her concern is about the health situation in Uganda.
The what?
About the health situation.
Thank you. Yeah.
She says, recently, donor agencies got frustrated with Museveni over the exportation of our doctors. I think our Ugandan doctors are being exported out of the country, yet we don't have enough doctors. And recently, Belgium cancelled all its assistance to Uganda. Doctor, how are you going to tackle this issue in our country if you become the president?
Under normal conditions, everybody should be free to go where they want, to get work where they want. But in Uganda, there are not enough jobs. And the jobs that are there, the medics or the medical personnel are not paid properly. The health facilities don't have enough doctors or enough medical personnel. I really feel that the government, in making such decisions, should take the interest of Uganda first. And on the face of it, it's not proper to be exporting doctors when you need doctors. However, on the other hand, every professional should be free to seek a job, unless if you owe the government money, unless if you're on a government scheme or loan where you signed an agreement that you got to pay back before you do what you want. And therefore, under my government, that may not be necessary at all. There shouldn't even be legislation or conditions or programs to export. What the government needs to do, and what my government will do, is to make the conditions in Uganda good. You make the working conditions of the doctors good. You make the salary package and the remuneration for the medical personnel, nurses and doctors and medical assistants good into the country. I'm telling you that very few doctors or very few professionals actually leave Uganda because they just want to leave Uganda. Usually there is a reason, political, economic, or social or otherwise. And if the conditions were stable, if the economy was properly distributed and was fair to everybody, if the medical facilities were well equipped and the doctor can actually do an operation and be proud that he's done a good job, then this issue will fizzle away on its own. So the best thing is that the government has failed. It has failed to put up good medical units. It has failed to pay the medical people properly. And now, as an excuse, you send them to say, hey, you can go somewhere else and earn more money. No, correct the problem first. And this is what my government is going to do. It's going to make sure that the health facilities are well equipped and make sure that the health personnel are looked after and paid properly.
This question is from Kampala, Uganda. It's from TJ. He says, Doctor, first of all, he thanks you. I want to thank you for coming out as a true leader and to have the courage to take on this man, Museveni. He says, our judicial system is in total ruin. The courts,
the judicial? Sorry,
yeah,
again
he talks about the judicial system.
Thank you. Yeah.
The law and order. Says,
yeah.
You live in a country where there are laws and people are treated like human beings. Right now, our system is monopolized by one individual. What are you going to do to revamp or to overhaul the judicial system in Uganda?
Again, I did, I don't know whether it was on this platform, but I did answer that. I'd like first to state that you cannot condemn the whole judicial system, or you cannot condemn the whole judiciary as a blanket cover. There are very many, and I'm telling you, actually very many judicial officers, judges, magistrates, who are very honest, who have tried to do a very, very good job under very difficult circumstances. And many of them have got into trouble for doing the right thing. Many of them have got into trouble for not complying with government directives. And they've done the right thing professionally. Now, these people, we must hold them as heroes. These people, we must recognize them as part of the revolution. And we've got to pay credit and thanks to these people who have stood up by their principles. Now, after saying that, there are a number of judicial officers who are playing just the fancy boy of the government. And these are the ones that do all the things that we get in the news. Unfortunately, the good ones are not reported in the news. And that's why I wanted to start with that. It is very important to recognize that not everyone in the judiciary is bad. The good ones are not reported. But the bad ones, of course, come out. But these are the ones who have spoiled the name of the judiciary. These are the ones that take bribes. These are the ones that make judgments because they've been ordered by a certain ministry, a certain officer, by the police chief, by this state house. Obviously, this happens because the system is rotten from the top. And under a proper system, the good ones are going to be rewarded and encouraged. And we thank you very much. And I know you are there. I know you are there. I know you're part of the struggle. But the bad ones better watch out. Because under my leadership, you'll be cleaned out. And the judicial officers will not be able to make a judgment because State House says so. No, you should make a judgment. You should make a decision according to what is right professionally. And that is definitely going to be at the top of the agenda for a new administration under my leadership in Uganda, that we've got to clean up the judicial system. But I want to assure you that not all judicial officers are bad or corrupt. And for those that have tried to do a good job under difficult circumstances, I thank you. And I would like to encourage you to continue. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and things are going to change.
I have a question from one of our listeners from Anthony's Greece. I'll keep the name under wrap. It says, is there any possibility for free education in Uganda up to university level?
That is a difficult question, and probably it might be difficult to implement under the current resource structure and base of Uganda. However, I do feel that there is a need, and I talked about universal primary education, to be cleaned up, and this can be effectively done because it's not that expensive. Secondary school is a different matter. It's a bit more difficult. But university education, I feel, is very expensive. And government, in the 60s and 70s, there was a scheme. Government paid for the people in the university. They even got a living allowance. But in return, you worked for the government, and you are happy to do so. You could still go out if you wanted to, but most people with a good conscience would continue to serve their country. Now, I feel that probably the university system should be overhauled because it is very expensive and puts many students at a disadvantage, those who don't have enough money or those who are not currently sponsored by State House. I feel that university education should be looked at very seriously so that there is a level playing ground at university. For the secondary schools, It's a little bit more difficult, but still the government and the administration under my government can reinstitute the idea of bursaries for students and the idea of government help for bright students whose parents cannot pay. And the bursary system should be based on merit, not on whom you know, on whom the state house wants or nominates, but it should be strictly on merit, and there should be very tough and strict criteria and principles to be followed. Next question.
This one is from London, Mr. J. Asante. He says, Dr. Kiyingi, do you anticipate an independent judiciary? I think.
Yeah, under my leadership, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be totally independent, and I want to emphasize that. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Under my leadership, we'll have a totally independent judiciary.
This one is from Uganda, Mr. K. Tito from Kampala. Says, we have seen, let me go to the phone and take this caller. Caller, are you there? Question, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. It's Numete once again.
Yes, what's your question?
Yeah, I have two questions to ask Dr. Kiyingi.
Okay.
The first one is about the dubious, malicious, self-centered, and professional contracts made by the state, i.e., the fuel drilling and road construction, railway line. How is it going to handle those contracts when it comes to power? Because they've already signed the contracts, and some of them are in the way being done. So how is it going to handle those contracts? Is it going to cancel everything and then rewrite a new chapter about those contracts, or how is he going to handle that case?
Okay.
The second one is about the Uganda shilling. Before, when Museveni came in power, according to Betty Nambozi, I was trying to listen to her. We had the biggest note was 5,000 note. So Museveni convinced us that we should knock off two zeros, and then the 30% of the every 100. So now, as we are talking, the biggest note is 50,000. How is it going to stabilize our currency? What assurance is it going to give us? What assurance is he giving us that we can trust him that we are not going to suffer the same way we suffered when Museveni came in power in 1986? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Numete Umula. Doctor, did you get the questions?
The first one was a bit hazy, but I believe it was about the contracts government has already signed.
Yes.
For various projects. Is that right?
Yes, like the oil and road maintenance in the country. Yes.
Okay.
And then the second one was about stabilizing
the Uganda shilling.
Shilling.
That one I got clearly. Now the first part, government has got to scrutinize these contracts. If the people that are doing the job now, the contractors, have got nothing to hide, then they'll come to us on the table with a contract with all the details. For example, if we take oil, they should show us a full contract. They should show us the beneficiaries. They should show us the distribution of profits. They should show us the beneficiaries. They should show us the anticipated income over the next 15 to 20 years and how that is going to be divided between the investors and the government. At the moment, we are in the dark about many of these things. And there's, of course, strong suspicion that this is being used as personal property. Now, if those companies or those multinationals have got nothing to hide, they'll show us the details of all these contracts. At the end of the day, it's the Uganda national interest that is paramount. And if we find that some of these contracts are not beneficial or actually dangerous to the Ugandan and to Uganda as a country, then first and foremost we shall offer to renegotiate with them. Because some of them are putting money, yes. If that fails, we can look at other options. And I don't think that a serious company that has invested a lot of money, that wants to do a good job, and has not been involved in the actual corruption and theft, will have anything to hide. And I feel that this will be an easy thing to solve. As far as the Uganda shilling, now, for those that are outright dangerous to the country, and for those that have not delivered, and for those that have got fake contracts, and instead of quoting 10 million, they've quoted 500 million, because 490 million is going to be divided between them and now the thieves in the government. Of course, that type of contract deserves to be scrapped, and they would find a legal basis to do that in terms of national interest. For the Uganda shilling, I share your concern, and this is now in a very sorry state. And it's not because Uganda is poor. No, and it's not because Uganda cannot maintain itself. No, it's because of theft, of imbalance in usage of money, and in terms of misuse of government funds and government revenue. And it's also in terms of monopolizing exports for personal gain. When you want to correct currency imbalances, you cannot just legislate. You cannot just decide that from today I've uplifted the Uganda shilling, it appreciates 50%. I know Mr. Museveni did this when he came into power. He actually devalued it, sort of cut it down and say cut off 2 zeros now. Or upgraded it. But you don't do that just on paper without the fundamentals being right. And the first thing to be looked at are the fundamentals of the economy of Uganda. The fundamentals are, even now, even with oil, the fundamentals are in agriculture, the agricultural products, and then, of course, the service industries like tourism. In agriculture, I've mentioned before that Uganda's agricultural potential can sustain not only Uganda, but probably half or even more of the African continent. If agriculture is looked at properly, if there are proper systems and proper protocols, Uganda can sustain itself and probably half or more of Africa. Therefore, there is enough money to be generated from the Uganda economy to stabilize the shilling, to reduce the borrowing, to have the shilling be worthwhile again, to have the Uganda shilling to be competitive. Another thing that brings down a currency like Uganda is the money that is siphoned from government. If, for example, Uganda borrows or is given, as now happens, billions of shillings or millions of dollars, but half that money runs back to the outside world immediately because of crafted deals and theft, obviously the local currency is going to suffer, because at the end of the day, you've got to convert the local currency into foreign currency in order to pay for this debt. But you're paying for a debt which is already tripled even before you start, because half the money has gone back anyway, and you're paying interest on it. If there is no theft and the money is used properly inside the country, this alone, without anything else, is going to stabilize the economy and the Uganda shilling. So, correction of the Uganda shilling might take a little bit of time, but it is the fundamentals of the economy. Once these are corrected, the Uganda shilling will shine again, I can assure you, my friend. And I've got big plans to make sure the fundamentals of the economy are put right. Next question.
Thank you much. Thank you, Doctor. I want to remind our listeners that our phone lines are open. Please call in with your questions because we're running out of time. This question is from our studio. It's from one of our American friends. His name is Mr. Albert Jr. Bronson. It's about environment. It says, Lake Victoria, it says, I love Uganda very much, and I've read a lot about your country and Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is being polluted with industrial waste, and this is going on at an alarming rate, and it's affecting the marine life in that area. Do you have a plan to combat this danger that is ruining the beautiful lake in your region?
Yes, definitely. This goes back to my introduction of about typhoid. I did talk about poor drainage systems. I talked about the wetlands. Now, these affect Lake Victoria very much. And there's been negligence, absolute criminal negligence about this. And there's been money spent, for example, in trying to clean up that weed, that green weed, over the last 15 years, probably millions and millions of dollars, but nothing to show. This money has been siphoned. Definitely, under my government, Lake Victoria would be given a priority in terms of cleaning up the shores, in terms of looking after the lake properly, because the livelihood of Ugandans and also the climate and also for future generation depends on a stable, sustainable environment. This goes to the cutting down of forests, which the listener did not mention, but this also affects the Lake Victoria because this affects the rain and the wet seasons. Dry and wet seasons, the rain pattern. If you cut down Mavera forest, if you cut down the forest on Sese Islands and plant palm trees do not evaporate, as you know, as much as a normal tree. And therefore, you're going to disturb the eco balance. This will be looked at under my government to make sure that Lake Victoria is looked after and is cleaned up, and to make sure that the drainage systems and the sewage systems and the industrial byproducts are not just dumped in Lake Victoria without proper treatment. Thank you.
This one is from Mr. K. Tito from Kampala. He says, Mr. Museveni has been crying wolf lately over the current economic situation in the country. He's blaming his ministers, permanent secretaries, and everybody else. Doctor, could you give us a brief summary on how you are going to tackle the...
Can you just repeat the question, please?
He says Mr. Museveni has been crying wolf over the current economic situation in the country. That's the lately. Yeah. He has blamed his ministers, the PS, and everyone else in the country.
Yep.
Could you give us a brief summary of how you're going to tackle the economic situation, in general, the economic situation in the country?
I've just answered part of that question.
Yes, you did.
When I was talking about the Uganda shilling.
Right.
Once you go to the fundamentals and get them right, the economy is going to stabilize. Now, putting blame on somebody when actually the real disease starts with you, I think is totally ineffective and, as you say, is crying wolf. The corruption has played a very big part in destabilizing our economy and also an influence of the Uganda shilling. As I said, if you borrow or if you get a grant of $100 million, to build a road or school or hospitals, but 50 million goes out immediately because of theft and corruption. What do you expect? You're going to be paying much more for something that you don't have, and therefore the economy is going to go down. So corruption has got to be stopped from the top. If there is a special clique that does not pay taxes, if there is a special clique who can get in containers and containers of goods without declaring them, if there is a special clique that actually get free things from government where they should be paying, then the economy is going to continue to be like this. There's going to be an imbalance. I did tell another group before that decency and honesty must start at the top. And I gave an example that, for example, if the rules at Entebbe airport stipulate that if you bring in a camera or any electronic goods above $1,000, you got to declare it and pay some tax. I'm telling you that under my leadership, under my presidency, if Mrs. Kiyingi, my wife, comes back into the country after seeing her friends in Australia for a holiday or something like that, and she has bought or been given a camera worth more than $1,000, she would have to declare this at Entebbe airport like any other Ugandan, and she will pay taxes. So decency has got to start from the top. Honesty has got to start from the top. Now, if Mrs. Kiyingi can fill in a form and pay taxes and declare, tell me, who else is going to dare go through Entebbe airport without declaring and without paying the right taxes? I may not even have to push very far once they see a good example. And this is what I want every Ugandan to know, that if there is no theft at the high-end top echelons of government, theft among the ministries and the lower groups, one, is going to be reduced substantially, and two, is going to be very easy to fight if there is no theft at the top. Thank you.
I have a question from Mrs. Nak, N-A-K-K-A. She's from Uganda. It reads, Dr. Kiyingi, good afternoon. You are living a good life in Australia. You have a good profession. You have a great family. Why do you want to get into this mess in Uganda right now?
Thank you very much for your concern. Unfortunately, that mess in Uganda affects everybody. It will affect your relatives. It will affect your offspring. And if all of us, if we found a comfort zone, did not care about anyone else, the world would be a very different place. Most of the major things that have happened in the world have happened because people have been courageous enough to stand up. People have been courageous enough to show the world that we can have a better place. Yes, you do get into trouble. Already now, as you know, government is after me and bringing up all these ridiculous and framed charges. But at the end of the day, that's the price to pay for being a good human being. And the time has come that we should not just fold our hands and close our eyes. A change can be effected in Uganda, but time is running out. We don't have much time. This is the time to effect a change in Uganda. For yourself, for your children. I don't know who the one who asked that question is, whether he's in Uganda or outside Uganda.
She's in Uganda. She says she's from Kampala.
If you're from Kampala, I don't think you'd be asking me such a question. I think you'd be thanking me for joining the struggle to liberate the rest of the country. But maybe you're one of those who are so comfortable, who are so satisfied with the system and the unfair system that you don't want things to change. If that is the case, then I'm sorry for you. Because you look around you, even if you're very, very comfortable now and you're one of the beneficiaries of the system, people are dying of typhoid. And you cannot think in isolation that you are in your comfortable zone because you know State House, because the house girl and the houseboy that you employ may actually come in tomorrow hibernating with typhoid because he stays in the slums anyway. So he comes to work to look after your children. He's already infected. Your children in your comfort zone are going to have typhoid. I think in this case, you better wake up and you better join hands to clean up the country and thank everybody like me who is willing to stand up and give up their comfort zone in order to help the rest of the country.
Dr. Kiyingi, we have about 4 minutes left to the top of the hour. I think I'm going to request you, in a humble way, to give us just a few words or a summary for tonight.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, and I thank those people who have asked a question. Now, I'd like to finish by challenging all of you. It's good to talk, it's good to ask questions. It's not very good to complain, although many times we have to complain. The real question is, what have you done? You, the listener, you, the person who says you care about Uganda, what have you done to make Uganda better? And what contribution are you bringing to the table in order for us to effect good governance and clean leadership in Uganda? That's a challenge I leave to you, because you need to act, and the action must be now. Again, I'll refer you to our website, www.ugandafdo.com. Don't just talk. Don't just sit. Act, and act now, in order to effect a change to remove dictator Yoweri Museveni from leadership in Uganda. God bless you all.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much.